Come be a part of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics with your host, Dr. Ed Holliday. Hear the voices of liberty speaking all across America. Doc Holliday provides thought-provoking interviews and commentary about the issues and actions that are afflicting this country and what we need to do to get America back on track. Get fired up, get inspired, get on board with Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics right now.
And here we go.
And that's the sound of rock cracking, and we got some rock cracking. Why? Because we got a new presidential candidate in the 2020 race over on the Democratic side. How about that? I think there's one came in on the Republican side, but that's like a pebble against a granite rock. So we're not going to talk much about that. Not going to talk anything about it. There's no race there on the Republican side. It's Trump or nothing, it looks like. So listen, what's going on with Democrats? Well, 20. They needed 20, I guess, because it's 2020 election. And it's probably going to end up being 22 or 23. But right now there's 20 candidates lining up. And remember, 4 years ago there was 16, 17, and then some said 18. Two or three outliers out there. And Donald Trump ran against them all and put them all out to the woodshed as he became the nominee. So what happens in the Democratic Party? Well, there's a lot of wishing, a lot of hoping, a lot of there's not a lot of fighting going on right now. They're just trying to find finances, and Bernie Sanders has got that. He's really working hard on putting that together. But there was a splash. There was a splash last week with former Vice President Joe Biden. Everybody had been waiting for him, waiting. Was he going to do it? Is he too old? He's 76. Keep aging, of course, as the campaign rolls on, and he looks a little tired in the eyes. But Joe Biden jumped in, and it's like a little fire on the mountain, I think.
And there's fire on the mountain, lightning in the air, rolling them hills, and it's waiting for me there.
Well, I said there's gold in them there hills waiting for me there, and Joe Biden has not lacked a desire to run for the White House. He's had two runs before, I think 84, 88. 2008, he was in there a whole mess of Democratic candidates before talking about presidential aspirations before Obama and Hillary slugged it out, and Obama became the nominee. And then, of course, history is made. Everybody thought this young whippersnapper Obama might be too young for the White House, so they thought they would pull in Joe Biden to help show an old senator to help this young whippersnapper out named Barack Obama, and it did. And now at 76 years of age, Joe Biden thinks he has enough energy and enough mind power to become president of the United States. We will see. We'll see how that goes. But I will tell you that Joe Biden has wanted to be president before, and he evidently took a lot of time looking at this. Will he be able to raise the money? Well, I don't think he'd be running if he couldn't raise the money. But he jumps in being number one in the polls now. With so many people running, it is hard to get name recognition. And of course, he will not have to spend money to get name recognition. But what does the left wing media think about it? What we called a lamestream, some people used to call it a mainstream media, but NBC, let's just listen to what they had to say about Joe Biden jumping in the race last week.
If we give Donald Trump 8 years in the White House, he will forever and fundamentally alter the character of this nation, who we are. And I cannot stand by and watch that happen. That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
in a dramatic campaign video using images from the Charlottesville white supremacist march. The former vice president saying President Trump shocked the conscience of the nation by saying there were some very fine people on both sides.
And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime. We are in the battle for the soul of this nation. I believe history will look back on 4 years of this president and all he embraces as an aberrant moment in time.
Biden starts out at the head of the pack, getting a big boost from name recognition after decades in the Senate and 2 terms as vice president, as well as sympathy for the loss of his son, Beau. Biden does have a strong base in the labor movement. Now he's planning to highlight that support with a union rally in Pittsburgh Monday. But the political challenges are daunting. First, campaign money. Biden does not have the online base of small donors that have fueled Bernie Sanders' campaign and helped propel Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, and Kamala Harris to become rising stars. A New York Times analysis showed Biden would have to raise $100,000 a day from now until Christmas just to match what Sanders has already banked by the start of this month. Second, the age factor. Although a year younger than Sanders, at 76, Biden has little experience campaigning in the digital age. And after years on the public stage, along with his many accomplishments, positions Biden's held that are now controversial. Voting for the Iraq War, authoring the 1994 crime bill, now resented among some minority communities, and his treatment of Anita Hill when he led the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings on Clarence Thomas.
To this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved.
More recently, criticism that Biden has given unwanted contact to women, although not sexually. Biden responded to the allegations, saying he never touched anyone in ways he believed were inappropriate, but says he will be much more mindful of personal space.
And I get it. I get it. We'll find out whether I can win in the primary. I'm an Obama-Biden Democrat, man. And I'm proud of it.
Well, he said as an Obama-Biden Democrat. He said he's proud of it, and can he convince Democrats it's okay to be an Obama-Biden Democrat? Have they moved on further left than when Obama was president and Joe Biden is vice president? May have. Again, NBC introducing Joe Biden, they had this to say. I played that clip. Here's a little longer clip, but this is what they said that Joe Biden would build his campaign around. Let's take a listen to this. We've heard some of this before, so take a listen to how NBC News talked about Joe Biden.
History, his record could be a strength and also a liability.
Well, you mentioned his name recognition. Obviously, that's a big strength in the beginning. But the question is whether he fits with where the Democratic Party is right now. We see in some of the candidates more progressive, more to the left, certainly younger, more diverse. So how is he planning to deal with that?
This is an historically diverse Democratic field, Savannah. There's no doubt about that. And right now, the former vice president is signaling that he wants to run on the third term of Obama. Now, that could be effective in a general election. He wants to cast himself as the counterpoint to President Trump. And he stands to potentially peel off some of those working class voters who helped sweep Donald Trump into the White House. But the question is, how will those primary voters respond? We will find out soon enough. He will become the 17th major Democratic candidate to announce. Savannah and Craig.
All right.
So we see it's interesting to see how the left-wing media is going to play out with all these different candidates. Who are they going to get behind? Bernie Sanders, who's the Democrat socialist, he is a socialist. I think he said he joined the Democratic Party so he could become the nominee, but he's a socialist. And we know that. We've talked about that before. And now you got former Vice President Biden putting his name in. And for the party of minorities, the party of trying to put together a coordination of minorities, of black, Hispanic, women, the gay agendas, all these put together. And what do you have? Well, you got the top three right now in the polling is 2 old white men and homosexual mayor of a Midwest town there in Indiana, a mayor, but he's number 3 in the polling. He's beating out Beto O'Rourke, who spent way over $100 million trying to get name recognition in the Senate race with Ted Cruz we've talked about. and he seemed to be the poster boy to the second coming of JFK, or Obama Jr., some people called Mr. O'Rourke. But now you have a mayor of a small city. I won't say small, but it's not a major city in the country compared to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. Sometimes people think they could be presidential candidates just coming from a mayor's job. Rudy Giuliani didn't get very far in the Republican primary, but here we have Pete Buttigieg that has just rocketed right in number 3, and he's the first presidential candidate to announce and then kiss his same-sex husband. That are, anyway, whatever his husband or wife, or what do you call same-sex marriage? And so he's rocketed in number 3. So in this party seeking the black vote, the Hispanic vote, the American Indian vote, seeking all these different votes, and they get 2 white men who are over 75 years old running for the nomination. And then, so where does everybody else line up? Well, Kamala Harris from California, the African American who comes from Jamaican descent, and you got Cory Booker. Now he used to be mayor of New Jersey, but he also became senator of the entire state of New Jersey. So he's got more than just mayor experience. But where does that leave the Democrats? Are they going to go for Bernie Sanders? Are they going to go for former Vice President Joe Biden, because he was the vice president under Barack Obama, which they remember fondly as, hey, Democrats getting everything they want? So we have an interesting race in seeing where the money goes, see where the Democrats put their money. And they all seem to be anti-Trump. I mean, it's Trump hate spewing over. It's the cup runneth over, not in joy, but in hate of Donald Trump, all up and down the line. And we said, that's how Joe Biden has based his whole campaign on Donald Trump not being what he sees in America. And he's scared if Trump gets 8 years, then they'll fundamentally change America. Well, thank goodness, because Joe Biden and Barack Obama are fundamentally trying to change America into something that it never had been before, and we're still trying to get over that headache. So Donald Trump and all the rock-splitting politics we talk about here has actually brought some sanity back into the way government will function. Now, liberals and progressive here may say Donald Trump's bringing sanity back. Well, he's bringing back the ideas of common sense that can run a government and get rid of the swamp, draining the swamp. And it's made Republicans mad, it's made Democrats mad, but the American people are hearing and seeing what they voted for. And that's where Trump is going to get hard to beat when it comes to keeping the economy going and growing and people's paychecks. What happens when an economy works with unemployment very low? Well, that means more people have jobs. What happens when you have more people with jobs? They got more spending money, which it cycles around and helps the economy keep growing. Yes, there are business cycles, and there are Democrats begging for a recession, begging for the business cycle to sink here in this last year of Donald Trump, an election year. Can it do it? Yes, it could. But that's why Donald Trump is still trying to pull out regulations. He's trying to, everybody go, well, the tax cuts are over. They're not over. It happens another year and another year, and businesses are still getting the tax cuts to invest. And that's why the tax cuts are not over. If you look back, and we've mentioned this on our show before, Ronald Reagan. It looked awful for Ronald Reagan his first 2 years in office. And it took about 2 years for his tax cuts to really get the economy going. I believe Donald Trump, even if nothing else happens, the economy can get step up another notch, even on what we have. When you look at the Ronald Reagan history, nobody wants to look at that, especially the mainstream media. They don't want to see that it took a little bit for Ronald Reagan's tax cuts to really start working and then it hit just right with his reelection. And Donald Trump, it couldn't work that fast immediately, and it's going to take some time for them to soak in and really get the economy up and going. So there's a lot of things to look at, and the China deal with the U.S. that Donald Trump's trying to hammer out, it's imperative. I said on this show before, it's slowed the economy down, the worldwide economy, and in a way, that's why Donald Trump, I believe, is so disheartening. It hurt him, hurt America, hurt our economy when the Fed raised rates back in December, and people talked about Trump going ballistic and trying to affect the interest rates. Well, he should have, because he was keeping the economy on, cooling it down to keep it from overheating by just doing his China trade deal. The Fed did not, they should realize that and should see that. Donald Trump was slowing the economy enough where between that and if you remember, there was a government shutdown. He didn't have to have the Fed raising rates to slow the economy down, because he was working that direction for the long-term efforts of our economy with China, with the rest of the world, by working on this Chinese-American trade deal. So those are thoughts from Doc Holliday, and as far as the economy. Now let me remind you, you're listening to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. You're listening to us right here on webtalkradio.net. And we do have a book out there called Bedrock Truth. We need this more than ever in our country today. You can order that book. You can go to www.docholliday, holiday of two L's, docholliday.org. Order that book. Let me tell you, we are happy to have people telling me back in the Tea Party days, talking about it. Been a 10-year anniversary here coming up in the next month. We'll do a show celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Tea Party movement, and you can look at some of the books that are on that web page that talk about the early Tea Party days. So order those books when they're still around. When they're gone, they're gone. Won't be a reprint on those. So we have a few left, and if you haven't got one, you want to know what the Tea Party years were like, order that. The one I would say is Walk With Me. You can look at that book titled Walk With Me on a website, and we got a few copies left of that, and when they're gone, they're gone. But it talks about the early days of the Tea Party, and where is it taking us now, and what you say, well, the Tea Party's gone. Well, the framework is there. People were pulled into politics, people were pulled into what's going on, people were pulled into voting, and it has affected our country, the direction of our country. And as much as the mainstream media and the progressive hated the Tea Party movement, remember the IRS, how they utilized the IRS to try to squash the Tea Party, and it did. It really did. And we'll talk about it on a show coming up sometime here the next month, and we'll explain what really happened. But I do want you to go back to the website there, and you can check it. You can go on the front page of Rock Splitting Politics and see the cover of Bedrock Truth. Click on that. It'll take you right to the web site, and we'd love to get that book out to you. Love to get that one and anything else you see there you'd like to order, because some of them will be going off the page here in a few weeks, and we'll realign things. But get any of those Tea Party books while they're still available. The Rock Splitting Politics book is one of those. So just go to www.docholliday.org and order your book. We'll be glad to get that out for you. Now, we're going to talk more about the Democratic race for president, for the Democratic nomination. If Joe Biden jumping in, who will garner the African American vote, which is very important in a Democratic primary. And usually the Democratic primary has the African American vote will get behind one of the candidates pretty soon. We saw that in Hillary Clinton. That's basically how she overpowered Bernie Sanders, other than the help she got from Donna Brazile and the questions before the debate. You know, the hierarchy of the Democratic Party had it in for Bernie Sanders. Now, he doesn't talk about that much, but the Bernie Sanders supporters should be griping. They don't like to shine a bad light on Hillary Clinton, but I mean, she cheated. I mean, she absolutely cheated 4 years ago during race for the Democratic primary. And we know that, and of course the mainstream media is not going to talk about that. Now that's not something I think she ought to go to jail for. That's another story. She ought to go to jail for breaking the law when it comes to her emails and destroying emails after they were subpoenaed. And I mean, who else in the world could get away with that? And why did she get away with it? One day, will she end up paying for it? Well, we've had a gentleman on this show, and I didn't ask if I could share this, so I won't, but he's been a past guest. And Hillary Clinton, back in the 90s, this is a well-respected gentleman, known all over Washington and the halls of Congress, and really respected. And then after this Monica Lewinsky affair brought out, and they had to get the story off the affair, and Hillary went on and said, this is the results of a vast right-wing conspiracy, and they had to punish somebody. And they found this gentleman, and again, I won't go say his name now, but he was put in the crosshairs of Janet Reno's FBI, and just it was basically Hillary Clinton saying ruin his life. 2 years of all kind of grand jury testimony, and he was found innocent. I mean, had not done anything. And yet, it ruined his reputation. It ruined everything he'd worked his whole life for. And he just told me last week, he said, if Hillary Clinton would go to jail, he said, I would love to see her in handcuffs. And if I had to be in handcuffs with her to watch her go into jail, he said, I would put those handcuffs on, because he knows she's guilty of so many crimes that he's willing. He said he'd go to jail too, just to make sure she got in jail, because she deserves justice so much for so many things she's done over her entire life. But so as I talk about that, will Hillary Clinton ever have to pay for justice for what she did to our country when it comes to national security and how many countries are watching her server and emails? So when we get back to this 2020 election, how will the Clintons play out in this? Right now, you think the Clintons are power brokers? Of course they want to be. They want to be power brokers. What happens if Attorney General Barr actually does go back and look at those emails and how the FBI allowed Hillary Clinton to get off scot-free? What if he says, let's go back and look at this, and actually applies the law to Hillary Clinton's actions? What would happen? Well, how would they be, even if that is brought up, they're being looked at? There's so many people who are sick of the Clintons in the Democratic Party. All of a sudden, they could be out of the being power brokers. And I bet the Obamas wouldn't love nothing more than the Clintons to sort of, vacate the stage, to get off the stage. But those are Doc Holliday's thoughts of what's going on in the overall picture of the Democratic Party. There is this push to go further to the left, further and further to the left. And Bernie Sanders loves it. Kamala Harris loves it. Cory Booker loves that. Why do they get so fascinated with the socialism that is destroying Venezuela? And so many people can attest to that who have come to this country, who have lived in these socialist systems, and I hope they'll start speaking up. And they have. Just a couple of weeks ago, when Bernie Sanders was doing a town hall of Fox News, there was someone that said, how do you account for liking the Soviet Union? She was from there, and he said he didn't like the Soviet Union. He liked the socialism of Denmark and Sweden, and yet they're not all socialists, and everything's not going hunky-dory there either. But I do hope we'll bring out more and more of these people who love socialism. It's great to say everything will be free, but anybody with half a brain knows it can't be free. It takes an economy that is working, and people looking for better ways to make things work better and the better mousetraps. That does not happen in socialism, and the government controls what people get and take away what people get, and then people get stingy. They don't want to use their brains to make things better and better. And that's why there's long lines in socialist countries. They depend on the government instead of the people. So that in a nutshell, that's one of the things that we're going to see come out in this Democratic race for the nomination. Will the new hard lefters will they get the nomination? Would it be a Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, or Cory Booker? Where is it going to go? Nobody knows. People are thinking, well, Joe Biden's going to come in, and will he really ignite the Democratic population? I saw one report, and I'll agree with this. I forgot who said it, but Doc Holliday will say it. And I think Bernie Sanders could have wrapped things up if Hillary hadn't cheated. But more than that, if Joe Biden had gotten in the race as the vice president, Obama, coming off 8 years Obama, Joe Biden probably could have beat Donald Trump 4 years ago. Reason I'm saying that, because Donald Trump was just saying things he wanted to do. He had no background to prove he could do it. There were so many conservatives who did not vote for Donald Trump because they didn't believe him. They thought, well, he's just a liberal, and he's going to come in and be very liberal. And he has not. He's stayed conservative in so many areas, and so there's going to be more votes coming from that conservative part. But a lot of the people who they say put Trump into office, a lot of disaffected white Democrats and throughout the Midwest and other places that helped win Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and surprised everybody. These are the voters that Joe Biden can appeal to, and that's where his hope is. So we're going to wait and see, because Joe Biden 4 years ago very likely would have beat Donald Trump. But now Donald Trump has a record to go on, and we'll see if Joe Biden can get through the primary. He's got the name recognition and he'll get the money, but can he do that? Will the Democrats want him to be their standard bearer in 2020? We're going to have a lot to talk about on Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics, and it won't all be about Donald Trump, because we're going to see what's going on over on the Democratic side also, because it's very important. We are fighting for the soul of the nation. I agree with Joe Biden, and I don't like the way in the direction he wants to take our nation. That's why the Tea Party rose up. That's why conservatives got together for a while and shot each other up in the foot, politically speaking. And then Donald Trump became the standard bearer of leading the Republican Party. And he's taken America in a direction of making America great again. And I know no other thing to epitomize what was happening than we talked about a few weeks ago at the White House in the prison reform, a 1 year anniversary of that. And they had a young African American, and they asked him what he thought about what was going on in the prison reform, the First Step Act. And he just said, I'm going to keep this short and simple. He said, 2 months ago I was in the penitentiary. Now I'm in the White House. He just said, keep making America great again. That's a great way to end the show. And we'll see you next week for another round of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. See you then.
Thanks for joining us today, and remember to listen again next week for another edition of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. You can order Ed's new book, Bedrock Truths, by clicking on the book cover right in front of you on the screen, or visit DocHolliday.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.